You're listening to The Nervous Breakdown, where we explain the brain, spine, and pain. But please remember, this podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your own healthcare provider with any medical concerns. Listening to this presentation does not constitute a doctor-patient relationship. So I grew up in North Carolina, in a small area, rural area, about 5,000 people in the town.
Oh, really?
It was called Farmville. How fitting. Farmville, North Carolina.
Okay.
The big city close to is Greenville. You probably heard of Greenville. Yeah. East Carolina University.
Eastern North Carolina.
Yep. East Carolina University. So I grew up there and I was in Farmville, let's say until I was about 15, right? But my interest in medicine stemmed back before that. I was kind of the last one born in the family. I'm like the youngest on both sides and quite a bit of distance there, And so a lot of my relatives, aunts, uncles, and things like that, or great aunts, they were quite old when I was growing up. And my family really emphasized going to visit sick, shut-in family members. And so we'd go to church after Sunday. After church, we'd go and visit all these relatives. And at the time, it was like, can we just go home? But you kind of got to see this caring and compassion. And then when I was about 10 years old, my father himself got diagnosed with leukemia. And so he was fine at first, but eventually had more and more decline and having more and more pain. And eventually he passed away from that.
Oh my!
When I was about 15 years old.
So that pain, the pain issue that he had, you think that may have influenced your?
It did. At the time I was just wanting to and say I think I want to be a doctor. I want to help people. Pain wasn't my focus at that time, but it did plant a seed within me, right? So I left home at actually 15 years old and I went to the North Carolina School of Science and Math in Durham, North Carolina.
Yeah.
So it was a residential high school. That was neat. Went there, met some, great people, got to interact with other, like-minded students.
And you had to be smart to go to that school, didn't you?
Something like that. Some people say that. Right?
Yeah, they don't just take anybody.
They don't. That was a really interesting process. They had, testing that you had to do, even like psychological. What is this shape? What is the other side of this figure? A lot of things you had to do, which made no sense. It wasn't anything I prepped for, studied for. Anyone could even tell me, hey, you need to learn about this. And so that's the, advantage of having, mentors and things like that. They can help you along the way. But having none of that, somehow, I was able to go to that school. And from there, I ended up at Duke for undergrad. And so in another episode, I talk about how my friend introduced me to you while I was at Duke in undergrad. And that was my first encounter with you. And then from there, next time I encountered you was when I was in med school at Chapel Hill. And so then my last year.
So we both have a Duke and Chapel Hill and UNC Chapel Hill connection.
I always tell people I can't put the degrees too close to each other. It's time to fight, right? So, believe it or not, a third of my class was from Duke and Chapel Hill because most of them would stay and they get the in-state tuition.
Yeah,
I was from North Carolina, but they stay extra year to get in-state tuition.
Yes,
and then save them a ton of money. So a third of the class is from Duke. But anyway, so after that, I'm going to med school. I wanted to be a primary care physician, I thought. And I get to my first rotation, I was like, this is not for me. I love the subject matter. I love, knowing about each body system, but it was a little bit too slow for me, right? So you do something, you give them medication, come back in a few months and see how they're doing. And that didn't quite fulfill me. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, a lot of people are interested in emergency medicine, and that wasn't for me at all, because to me, that's just chaos. You don't know what's coming in the door. You don't know what it is. And I was happened to be at, some kind of banquet, and I bumped into or started talking to an anesthesiologist. And somehow they said, hey, you should come shadow me. So I go back to Duke from Chapel Hill to see an anesthesiologist at Duke. So, well, this is pretty interesting. They know something about everything, right? And everything is pretty much planned. You know what you're going to do. You know the surgeries. You know what their medical conditions are. And you're treating them in fast forward. And if you have hypertension and it goes up in the surgery, I got to bring it back down. If you have low blood sugar, I got to bring it back up. So you're watching these things. You're doing primary care, but in real time. And I said, well, this is great. And so I liked that. Went back and decided, hey, this is what I want to do. Also thought I wanted to do psychology and psychiatry, but anesthesiology.
That's quite different.
It is, but I enjoy the stories, I enjoy talking to people. So that actually came into play later because people say, hey, you like to talk to people. Why do you want to do anesthesiology? Man, you just put them to sleep to go to sleep. I was like, well, those few minutes where you meet someone and you basically telling them I'm going to take your life in my hands, you need to be able to gain their trust. You need to be able to connect with them. So
Absolutely.
I was like, for me, someone that can talk to people and actually likes talking to people is very useful in this field. But it also was very lonely because they don't talk back after go to sleep. And so then it was just like neurosurgery. We had subspecialties. And the ones that drew me in the most, we had cardiac thoracic, we had neuro, all those. But I liked obstetric anesthesia and pain management. The reason why is because, obstetric anesthesia, you have a lot of like very intense, moments to influence someone's life. There's a couple of kids named after me because it took the pain away. It's like, this kid's named Christopher. All right. Because they do the epidural and they feel so great. And so it's very meaningful interactions you had with people, even if you never see them again after that. And then pain management, they come back and they're feeling better. It's usually, not several months later, several weeks later, right? And so here, kind of like you with surgery, I'm able to do something about what it is you came to see me, right? Hopefully we can solve it. Hopefully we can fix it. If not, we'll get you to the right place. Maybe you need to see a surgeon. Maybe you need to do something else. But you gave me a chance to utilize some skills that I had to make their lives better. And that's what really drew me about pain management. And it becomes a difficult, I guess, specialty for some people, especially if you don't really care about the story, right? So for me, the story is important. And half the time, if I listen to the patient, I learn more about what's going on with them than if I just come in and, as you mentioned in another episode, if I say, oh, your MRI shows this, you need an epidural. Yeah. They may come in, the MRI may show this. And when I talk to them, yes, they have a disc herniation that's pressing on a nerve, but their pain doesn't shoot down their leg. It's really the SI joint. And they say, oh, when I get out of the chair and I get up in the morning, this is when it's really bad. Listening to the story helps me figure out what's going on with them. And so I kind of take those same principles applied in pain management. I'm able to get better outcomes, I think.
But tell the audience about your training. What?
Oh, sure.
This what were the stages of your training before you became an independent practitioner?
Sure. And so just like, with neurosurgery, after you got high school, of course, you have to complete that. And then you have medical school. So those 4 years for that.
College?
Yeah. I keep skipping them. All right. I skipped medical school before. Yeah. I actually went straight to medical. It's just so small. School of science and math. Okay. College. What's that? No. So college, 4 years of college and then 4 years of medical school. So that's 8 plus, high school, which I'll say, we'll just discount that. So 8 years there, plus your training. And at the time I came along, anesthesia was really a 3-year program plus a transitional year. So you could do surgery, you could do internal medicine, or you could do some kind of hybrid program like that for 1 year. Something in general.
Up front, before you started.
Exactly. Anesthesiology. And then you go into anesthesiology after. And now they're kind of all combined, complete programs, all housed within themselves. Like before, you might do your first year in, California and your residency in Ohio. They weren't necessarily connected, but now they're usually all in the same program. It's 4 years to become a general anesthesiologist, which means you have some training in doing neuroanesthesia, obstetric anesthesia, cardiac anesthesia, whatever the case may be, you should be able to do it, even pediatrics. But they do have specialties for people that want to do that all day, every day. I did a fellowship, so an additional training in pain management, and that's where we kind of really get into a lot of the interventional procedures, the epidurals and things of that nature.
And now, where was your residency?
So I did my residency in Columbia University, New York, and did my fellowship there as well.
Okay.
Strangely enough, my first, exposure to pain management was in the physical medicine rehab department at Chapel Hill. And so it was a rotation I ended up on. And physical medicine rehab to deal with a lot of, stroke patients, recovery, things like that. But there's also a subset that do, injections. For some reason, none of the other students on the rotation wanted to go to the procedural suite. They're like, hey, we'll do the inpatient stuff. If you just stay down there, I'm like, well, deal.
Okay.
And so by the time I, got to my 3rd or 4th week of it, attendings were trusting me to do the injections. I was like, this is really cool. And so then fast forward to go to, to residency and get into fellowship, and, you can kind of choose your pathway.
Well, let me interrupt you. So Columbia, that's New York City.
New York City.
How does a boy from
I was a country mouse in the city,
Carolina, population 5,000, end up going to New York City? I mean, is that was at the top of your list of where to go?
So most people may know or may not know about the match, right? So essentially, at the end of residency, you decide what you want to do, and you start applying to the programs, and then at the end, you make a list of where you want to go in the order that you prefer to go there. And the programs make a list of who they liked in the order of who they liked. I went to Columbia, and I really liked the people I met there. I liked the atmosphere. And I just thought, it's not going to happen. They're not going to choose me. To the extent because I said the programs were separated, I didn't have it first year set up.
Oh, right.
I didn't do any. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, that's probably not going to happen. But, I was also engaged at the time. My wife's also in medicine. And so she also had to do a list. So we did 2 lists, and I was like, hey, I know you didn't apply to anywhere in New York, but I really liked Columbia. Probably not going to happen. Let's do a match, no match option. So if I get into Columbia, you don't have a residency spot and I don't have an intern here, right? First year. Lo and behold, we get a call from the office, the education office at the medical school the day before the match saying, hey, it's called a scramble if you don't have a spot. Just so you know, you don't have an intern spot. I'm like, well, how's that?
You didn't apply for one.
Right. And I knew, but see, they don't tell you exactly where you're going yet. It's like, all right, that must have been a guy to Columbia. So I called my wife and said, hey, did you get called? She's at a different med school.
Yeah.
Did you get a call? She's like, yeah, they said I have a spot. Because we did a match, no match. That's the only one we did.
Yeah.
So the only way this happened is just, I'm going to Columbia. So what happened was you have to scramble into whatever positions did not fill. And of course, there's the cushy ones that are transitional years where you do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then there are the more difficult ones where you're doing general surgery all year. And guess where I ended up?
General surgery.
General surgery in the Bronx.
In the Bronx?
In the Bronx.
Oh my goodness.
So not only did I go to New York City, I went from the country to Bronx, New York.
Yeah. That's high trauma volume there.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of, we were in this hospital. Monterey Medical Center is connected to another one called North Central Bronx. North Central Bronx, low acuity hospital. Nothing's supposed to come there that's bad. Monterey Medical Center, referrals, helicopters, all this stuff. They're connected by a little door. One side of the block has this one. Someone gets shot, dropped off by his buddies one night who got shot. And that same rotation is me and two other residents. The third one something happened with he's a foreign student. Visa got revoked or something. And so, hey, by the way, he's leaving. He's out.
So you were well, that should have been 3.
Yeah. And they're taking on the whole gunshot wound, chest tubes, all 9, these labs every 2 hours. And then the attending's like, well, are you going to come assist me in the OR? Did you go check on the labs of this? And so there's 2 of us doing it. Like, how are we going to split this up? Like, we can either do, every other day you're on call, or just do day float, night float, and then switch. So I would do basically 12-hour days. They'd come in for 2 hours at night and then we swap. And so you're just there doing everything. So anyway, a lot of training in the surgical field in that aspect. And the wife landed on her feet. She got a good position as well. And she did her whole 4 years in New York City. So
that worked out. Let me point. This brings up an interesting thing that I should point out. Nowadays, they have reduced resident duty hours. They can't work more than 80 hours. But and you can say what it was when you trained. But when I trained, we didn't have that. It was you were there.
Sure.
When I was an intern, I was on call every other night.
Sure.
Which meant that I was at the hospital for 12 hours.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry. I was at the hospital for 36 hours, and then I was off for 12.
Right, and you're right.
Yeah. So and then you were right back. So every other night you were just you were on when you were on call. You were usually up all night. So we easily exceeded 100, 120 hours of
Sure. That changed. That new system came into effect my last year of residency.
Mm-hmm.
And it was frowned upon if you wrote down more than 80 hours. So I only did 80 hours a week. Okay. Before that, it was a lot. And it just didn't got the work done and got people taken care of. And, it was what it was. And it was the expectation going in. So
Yeah.
It's different if you're not expecting to do this, but, you heard the horror stories of being up all night and all this. And it's like, hey, this is what I signed up for. So while you're in it, it is what it is.
To be fair, the motivation for decreasing resident duty hours was concern about safety and errors, tired, and in fact, there was a well-known case in New York that precipitated this whole issue, and it was thought there was a complication that was thought to be related to fatigue.
Sure.
But let's get back so you trained, you did your residency and fellowship at Columbia in pain management.
Exactly. And then my wife was from Pennsylvania, I was from North Carolina. And he said, hey, Northern Virginia is right in between the two, halfway between my family and yours. So I was looking for jobs and went and took one in Northern Virginia, working for a large pain management group. So did all this training, became an anesthesiologist, and then never did anesthesia. So
because there was so much pain management.
So much pain in the world. We got to stamp out pain. It's like, if you're Superman, you can't go be an Uber driver. You got to be Superman every night.
Exactly.
But yeah, so working on pain. And so it was a great, learning experience, practice. It was a different setting where now you're resident fellowship, doing fellowship one day under supervision, and the next day you're in a private practice. And there's colleagues there, but they're doing their own work and they're trying to be efficient. You can't go, hey, can you come look at this so you become more, autonomous, and you start to have more confidence in your own decisions. They're kind of seeing how patients respond to things that you do. So it was a great experience. I learned a lot there. I actually helped them open a new office when I was there. And that was just before I, decided to come out to Alaska. And I was like, wait, I opened an office for them. It's doing pretty well. Why don't I just do that for me? Right. And so got in touch with you. Again, you didn't really know me at the time. So I typed a letter because your website, I can say this now, your website wasn't up to par back then. Because some information, oh, there's a fax number. Because they had a phone number, like, chances of calling a neurosurgeon and saying, hey, hello, it's not going to happen. So I was like, if I call the front desk, they're never going to give them the message. Let me type a letter. I sent it. And lo and behold, you emailed me back, I think, about a week or two later. And we set up a call. And then one thing led to another. And now I'm in Alaska and you're not.
Well, but I must say, you came out to Alaska and we did quite a bit of collaboration. We actually did some surgery cases together and had a good collaborative effort. And that continued until I retired from my clinical practice in Alaska and moved to a warmer climate in Nevada.
I'll probably have to do the same someday. But no, it was amazing, kind of having, I'll call you my unofficial mentor. I don't think we ever sat down and talked like that, but to have, someone that I can say, if he did it, maybe I can do it too. Let me contact him. And then you took the time to call back and write back and then came out and, introduced me connections and things like that. And I guess you probably, even unbeknownst to me, probably vouched for me in some situations with like, who's this guy who said he knows you?
Well, of course, I surely can. I recall giving you pointers about
Indeed.
where might be a good place to get set up because the need was there. And
Absolutely.
so it's been a good collaborative effort, and now here we are.
Yeah.
Under an online platform and working together to
Indeed.
continue to help people.
What I realized, and you probably did too, is that, as a practicing physician, you're helping generally one patient at a time, right? And then, but you realize it springs out, it grows for this patient has relatives and friends and things that they may not have access to this, or they may not have that same type of knowledge. So this platform allows us to bring these same type of expertise to other people that may not otherwise hear this or receive it. I was talking to our producer earlier, and I was telling him about music. I used to wonder why people would do a cover of someone else's song. And then there's one that says like, well, I like the way they do it. And you hear someone say, I like this version better. It's the same song. But when you hear it from this other person's interpretations, right, it makes more sense or it resonates with you more.
Right.
So
You can relate better. You like the style better than another, and everybody has a different style and different interests.
Yeah. And so when people, go in to see their provider, they may hear the same information, but it may not resonate with them. It may not sink in. And so if we can present it in a way that it helps even one person, then, this has not been in vain, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we've given people a good sense of what,
Who, what, when, where, and why.
there you go, the W's.
Yeah. And then why continue? The win continues. So keep watching, stay tuned, like and subscribe. This is the Nervous Breakdown. I'm Dr. Christopher Gay.
I'm Dr. Estrada Bernard. If it's the spine, the brain, or pain, we explain in language that is plain.
Like and subscribe.